Oh, it says here, he restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Now, here's the deal, people. This is a path. You can't see, get yourself where you can, please. Or I can use this back some. Okay, now, if you look at shadow and light, one side of this path is jealousy and envy. Lies and deceit. Oh, how you spell deceit? Hatred. If you look at the world the way we live in it, this is positive, this is negative. This is just as dangerous if it's an extreme as this is. And the reason for it is, this positive side turns it back on that. Teaches separation and deceit, and that our way is the right way. And we're seeing that manifested in religions all over the world right now. Our way is the right way. And they're turning away from the reality that there's jealousy and envy and all kinds of problems coming out of this negative side that support this separation. But if you choose to walk a path and get balance in your world, then you master both of these sides. Too far to the light is just as dangerous as too far to the dark. And what will end up happening is the yin-yang symbol. Remember, I know somebody who knows how to draw this better. You get the idea. And one of them has, thank you. Okay, now, here it is. This is dark. This is light. So I did this a little wrong, but that's okay. This one is open. So even in the darkest of places, there's a gleam of light. Even in the fullest of light, there's darkness. And it's condensed, and it's dense, and it's ugly. But it does bring about the balance. This line right here is the breath between the two. That's the balance. And what happens when you step into this place, you want to do that, go spend about 4 weeks in Thailand. And the reason that'll happen for you there's beauty and there's ugliness right next to each other. You will see prostitution, violation of children. Right next to the most beautiful of places, you will see altars in every yard. But you'll see misuse of power all over the place, and you will see the honoring of beings all over the place. And so suddenly you're forced into a juxtaposition inside yourself, if you're really open to what's there, to the point that you're forced here. And when you're forced here, you have to look at your own breathing principles and what your relationship is to these two things. Okay, now. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. That means if you choose to walk this path of spirit, there's plenty. And there are people who aren't going to agree with you. There are people who are going to want to try and pull you off of that path. Not because they don't want you to be on a spiritual path, but because they can't see and they don't understand. And sometimes they're literal enemies in the way that is happening, and people are finding, everybody has their ideas about how all that gets handled. Some with bombs and some with other kinds of ways. Thou anointest my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. That means the more that you step into the balance here, mastering the positive and negative of your own being, the more that life will give to you. I mean, it really will. It's really kind of strange. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now, forever doesn't mean only when you're in physical manifestation. And it doesn't mean only when you're in spiritual manifestation. It means all the time. Now, when you walk this path, and I was sitting out actually on Cherokee land, I vision quested the night of the harmonic convergence. The first time somebody in my family had gone back to that land in 150 years. The moon was really like, well,
Shelley, would you clarify for me exactly what you mean by vision quest?
just a minute. The moon was half dark and half light. And I was sitting out, the moon was right above, and I was watching it, and all of a sudden I heard this song being said. And in the process of watching this moon, and it went on that I was on this path. Now this is the path that we all, in one way or another, spiritually follow. This is that path that's talked about. This is the rod. This is all, there's all kinds of things that this is. I'm sitting there and I'm watching, on the one side, bombs and tanks and all kinds of stuff going off and all this other stuff over here, and just being told, just keep walking and nothing bad can happen to you. I mean, just horrible stuff going on both sides. You know, just keep walking. This went on all night long, till the moon set. And I'm sitting there crying. Not only at the beauty, but also the enormity of what's being taught. And what am I going to do with this? Because this is back in 1987, I think, when this happened. Now, so you got all kinds of stuff, both positive and negative. But you know, we live in a world that says you're not supposed to deal with this. This is bad. So there's no permission given in a world that doesn't, because this is the devil's territory. This is the good territory. There's no talking about the balance, and that you don't have to go out here to these extremes, that we have to look at these parts of ourselves in order to be able to walk this path and stay on it. We have to come to terms with this and what the relationship is. This is not about killing off this part of yourself. This is about embracing this part of yourself and mastering it and coming to terms with it and appreciating it, and then moving in to how we want that to reflect, and that includes our goodness. How many of you people have been really good people and gone out and tried to take care of folks, none of whom wanted your care? None of whom wanted, you know, your appreciation. None of whom wanted to be rescued. None of whom asked you to go do this thing for them. We just did it. That's over here. And that's misuse of power. Just as much as going over here and causing harm to somebody is misuse of power. Okay? So all this goodness that we think we want to be over here is just as much horse shit as, excuse me, as this is over here. What the deal is, you come to balance with it. And you don't kill off parts of yourself. What the hell are you doing? You embrace those parts of yourself. If you got a piece of yourself that's madder than hell and wants to destroy, then you better love it. You better nurture it. You better care for it and say, you know what? You're right. I did not take care of you. And I understand why you're pissed off. But just because you're pissed off and acting out doesn't mean that I'm going to go kill you. It means I'm going to nurture and take care of you and support you and let you have your anger and your rage and your horror and all of those things, and I'm in charge. Because if you don't take charge, that piece of you will rule at some point. If you were taught that you didn't have the right to take care of yourself and be in balance here, then I promise you, at some point, that piece is going to be pissed off and is going to act out. And all this goodness that you are is not the truth. We have to be able to be in balance with that. And when all the hell goes, keep sight of where it is we're going. Know that if we fall off, we have to, we've just encountered a challenge. How are you going to be able to let yourself take in what's there for you? So we have a session that goes back 8 generations and have this elder, an ancestor, come forward and say, I'm going to help you out here. You don't have to do this. Let me give you what I gave up. But I won't tell you there aren't consequences to it. Because to shift a life are consequences. Fear, going against the pattern, all kinds of stuff. Okay, so, you fall off either one way or the other. Okay, here's a challenge. And it doesn't matter whether it's psychodrama, energy, missionary, counselor, friend, therapist, shrink, social worker, who cares where somebody goes as long as they can get their needs met. Medicine man, medicine meeting, workshops, training groups where this is the focus, the spiritual and what we're doing. Okay, so you get this challenge, which pulls you back here, wiser. You go a little further along the path. And you go, oh. And then you're going to get tested. It's going to be an examination. Always is. Something's going to come up to see if you need more of the lesson or not. When it comes up, you're going to encounter this situation. Then you're going to go, oh, I don't think I need to go there. Or, oh, God, this is a yum yum. Whatever it might be. This one looks pretty good. And it's not the same as before. Now, I promise you. You don't do your work, you're going to marry the same thing you had in the first place until you master what's underneath it. That's the challenge. Then you're going to need a jerk. Who looks different. And you go through and you get all this testing, and or you see them and you go, oops, I think I'm going to go over here because I don't need to go there anymore. So then you get to progress a little further. Okay, so now here's another challenge. Sometimes you got a pattern where you keep going. But, you know, we're going to have challenges till the day we die. Each one enables us to clean out more of that room like I showed you yesterday over here. Or the scars that we carry are going to show up. This one right here. It may be where you are is on one of these scars, and maybe you're in a new room. So there's a lot to master about this room. That's a process. Maybe something comes up, you're drawn back in over here, you just need to clean more of this room. Because it's another level. You'll hear people in therapy say, I don't want to go there again, I've dealt with this 100 times. Well, it's just another level, people. Another aspect that it was part of what didn't get cleaned out of that room, or dust that's built up, or what you forgot, or how it interacts with what is. And let me tell you something, sometimes you'll do your work, the rest of the world around you isn't ready for it yet. So that things got put on hold. Like, your job. It suddenly is dropped in your lap. You know, sometimes we get forced into things. Sometimes, you know, we'll have a job, and all of a sudden it's time for it not to be there anymore.
Dun, dun,
And you
dun.
hold on. Man, I need this job. I like the money. I'm going to stay right here. And you just get beaten all to hell on the riverbank, you know. And if you just turn loose, you're going to go wherever you need to go. 'Cause that's how life is. It's going to take you someplace. And eventually, whether you like it or not, you're going to turn loose. And you may not like how it got set up. You may not like it. But the bottom line and the fact is that that's how life works. You know, that's the path that we're on. And the more work we do, the more clear we are about how this works, and the less frightened we become of how it operates when you fall off this center line. But every one of us are on this center line. Every one of us are operating to get back on it. Every time we fall off, it's another chance for a growth process. For me, you know, I don't like what's happening to me. I'm growing like a weed right now. It's real weird, it's uncomfortable, and I'm pulling in all kinds of support and help and getting learning and all kinds of things. But you know what? I'm really happy. Underneath it all, I'm real excited about this challenge and what it's going to mean for this planet. I just have to figure out how to integrate it into my being as I go through this metamorphosis, because let me tell you something. Back to this circle, when you go through this, there's a death process involved. There's a death to what was before I went down to Argentina the first time and met the whales. Now, I'm going through this with Spirit and everybody else around going, changing. And in the process, inside, I'm going through a massive metamorphosis. I've gone from a caterpillar, I'm going to turn into some kind of a butterfly. I mean, that's what that is. And there's something that happens in that cocoon that we know turns into liquid, but we don't know what that process is. And when you're conscious, and you expand your consciousness, and you clear out the garbage, you get real connected to what that process is. And it's not an easy process to walk with. Somebody turn on that fan, please. I'm burning up. Hair's wet again. It's not easy. None of the processes you people are in and are going to be in shifting this mythic pattern of your life is going to be easy. There's nothing easy about it. You're going to be up against it. You're going to be up against everything you've ever been taught. You're going to be up against everything you've ever believed. You're going to be up against everything you've ever thought you could around receiving and needing and wanting and challenges and mastery and confusion and structure. It's all going to be up. And it's our job as a group and a community to walk you through it. You come here, this is hard. I come to you and I say, listen, this stuff that's going on for me, this is hard. I feel really like a strange duck. It's getting stranger. Sitting in a room holding a friggin' heart with blood rushing all around, then I find out that this heart's fine when it was, I know, shit. And that she was given X amount of time to live, and now she's got a healthy heart running around like creation, like chicken, you know, running, pulling, running all over the ground, and without any chest pain. Without any real shortness of breath, just a little tiredness sometimes. It's moving through it. When I watched her walk 10 feet and have chest pain, that was validated by medical testing. This is not some airy-fairy esoteric process that went on here. So this group also has as a reflection of it a miracle. Any of you that think that this is not masterable, think about that. That we have in this group a miracle around the healing of the heart and everything that that stands for. And that's what y'all are working to do. You're working to create your own miracles and mastering and transforming the myth of your life about how you want your world to be. That's it. So, any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
Can you give guidelines, or is there a way to help to discern the voices? Your own ego voice, your spirit voice, your
Yeah.
critical parent voice, your imagination from your intuition, whatever.
See, that's all hearing. This is development of the ability to hear. And you have to start working on it. So what you do is you can image up in your head a scene from childhood where you were getting dressed down. And you pay attention to what your mom's voice is, if it was your mother, or your dad, from a negative perspective. Then you image stuff from a positive perspective, if there was one, if there wasn't. Where'd you get them? Who were they? Because they're there, whether we can touch base with them or not. Whether you guys are conscious of it or not, you know your God's voices. You know, I don't get in a car hardly. It's very unusual for me to get in a car and not say, okay, how should I go? I miss more traffic jams that way. Maybe accidents too, I don't know. I don't worry about it anymore. It's just what I do. Sometimes I'll say, what should I wear today? You know, well, that's putting responsibility someplace else. But what I find invariably on a morning that I think about that and ask the question and get told that something happens related to what I have on. Okay, so you begin to ask the questions. You'll hear the difference. I know that you hear my voice in your head, Donna. I know you do. You know, we have the voices in our heads of people who are important to us. We know who they are. We know what happens when they come up. You know your kids' voices. We know those voices. We just don't pay attention. You have to learn how to pay attention. And you do that by beginning to focus on who the different voices are, including parts of yourselves. This whole dissociative process. I gave a good example yesterday about my maggoty man, and the symbol he was about pulling out a part of myself that was really badly wounded and hurt, and being able to be there for him. It took years sometimes. We know now how to short circuit it, partially because of what I've learned in other people like me, but that's what that's about.
Well, what I experienced, I guess, is that for a period of years, I had an environmental support that supported me to listen to my intuition, and it was discussed. Now, there was misuse in that development of that. Okay, then I had this period of being by myself and no one around, and just focusing on the business, and still having that connection to listening to that spirit side or intuition side, whatever. And at the same time, I was doing readings or I was doing things that was keeping that pathway open. Now, where my confusion is now is that I know that I have intuition and I know that I'm guided. I was guided to get those animals yesterday. I was guided to do other things. I see it after the fact, but I don't hear it at the moment.
The downtime gets shorter as you pay attention. What's more, that's not all you were doing in that time. You were focusing on the business. Yes, you did continue your own growth. You left that piece out.
Yeah.
You were continuing your own growth, and you were doing these things over here.
Yeah.
And developing bases for those things related to not only the support of yourself, but support of the others. Support of health related to the Amazon.com stuff, related to people's capability of taking better care of themselves, related to the legal stuff that you've been doing. All kinds of things that you've been doing, even the work that you've been doing is about the empowerment of others. Yes, you were involved. Yes, you had all these tools. Yes, they were abused because you had no boundaries. You did not take care of yourself, and you let somebody feed off of you, and you supported them. At some point, you put your foot down and said, no, I'm not going to do that. So now you're working with boundaries to shift that pattern, and that's how it works.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so the chatter, so we're talking about the voices, the chatter that I hear in my head of you don't spend as much time listening to spirit, you don't spend as much time doing for others, really was me establishing that boundary to
And
stop doing for others, to create the balance to do for myself.
And moving back and forth and learning what that is.
Okay.
Okay?
So you don't have to necessarily hear, you can do the action and then have that sense of knowing
Some
afterwards.
That's right. Some
That's
people
what I
hear, not everybody hears. There's some things you can teach yourself to hear. Some people see, but not everybody sees the way we see here. Everybody has their own version of sight. Some people it's see-feel. There are some people that have literal visions of what's going on. I have both times. Taste. If something's not right in the air, I can taste it. I'll be doing a session with somebody, and if it's fetal, I will smell amniotic fluid, and I will taste amniotic fluid. I will taste meconium. It's really weird. There are other times too. You can smell odors in the room. And some of us have done that. You know, I mean, we'll be working with somebody and they'll be dumping energy like crazy, and people will start going, ooh, the smells, get some sage, go and do something. Okay? That's development of senses. And hearing. Now, I have a hearing loss, but there are times that I have great hearing. Touch. We all work with touch. When you're working with energy, we'll go over. I don't even have to touch a person to do it. You just start running, you'll know immediately where there's a tight spot. Or where there's blocked energy. Or you'll feel it. The more work you do on yourself, the more open you are to that, the more you learn about how to deal with that. That's why you have to work with the energetic patterns. That's why you have to learn. That's why you have to, that's one of the reasons bioenergetics is in place. You learn principles of bioenergetics and body structure, you know, all kinds of stuff about that. Touch for Health is all about that. Western medicine is beginning to embrace some of this stuff. And there have been really important people out there who are helping with that. Larry Dossey's one of them. You know, people are beginning to look as, what is this thing that's going on? You know. Now, I haven't gone around and had another experience in somebody's heart or liver or spleen or anything else. You know, I mean, I haven't done that. I didn't go looking for it. You know, but maybe it's a connection I had with Anita. Hell, I don't know what happened.
Were you in South America when that happened?
Yeah.
That's a nice bridge to build.
There's all kinds of bridges being built down there, but that's another lecture. Anyhow, so here it is, people. I walk a native path. You guys, some of you walk a Christian path, some of you walk a Jewish path, some of the people walk Buddhist, some Wiccan, some whatever. So the Native American path. Tobacco's put in here. We get born, we're here. We walk down this line. When we die, we come out here. Just like that smoke goes back to this good breeder, so do we. Whatever path you walk, that's what's going on, people. How do you want to go back and complete yourself and what you've mastered in this lifetime? What are you willing to do to shift your myth? And then take on what it takes with the support of a community to create what we have the opportunity of doing on this planet. This is our feminine nature, our feminine gate, our masculine gate, and us. And up here is Creator. This has a positive and a negative meaning, an expressive and a receptive aspect. This has an expressive and a receptive aspect, and both of them have a relationship to us and how we operate in life. And that's the new myth. What are we going to do with it? How are you going to build it? What do you want it to be? Kinds of things. but there are consequences. And, you know, just to say, yeah, you should go do this, and there are consequences over here. Again,
Oh.
the very next day, the best person things are really well. Good. You did a good job of that process. On a score of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, I'd give it a 7. Not bad for a beginner. So you did good. Come on in here, Helen. It's going to help the stuff.
This
Okay, one of the nice things about me, Tanya, related to resonance and taping, is my voice is deep enough and I'm loud enough that it comes across pretty good. It's just the way it is. Okay, now, there are several things about this last process that I want to talk about. And one of those things that I think has got you plugged in, Donna, and I know had Tanya plugged in, is something called rapprochement, which happens right here.
What is it called?
rapprochement. It's 18 to 24 months.
And it is a process, and that's right, it is that age range.
18 to 24 months.
Uh-huh,
And it's called rapprochement.
rapprochement. And that is ambivalence. I want to do this, I don't want to do this. You know, I want that, I don't want that. That's the time when kids are saying yes and no, mostly no. And everybody around them is saying, yes, you have to do this. No, I don't want to do it. Kind of the definition of boundaries.
What they do is they're starting to, they can walk now, so they try to go out and explore things, but every now and then they'll turn around and see if mom is still there, and they'll run back to mom, and once they get their reassurance, then they'll go and they're learning that they're
The whole
separate.
deal is mom supporting the beginning of independence. And a lot of mothers don't. It's where narcissism comes into play. Okay. But we want to talk about this from another place because I think that it's important to understand. Because this is a time really of no exit. When conception happens real tight up here, and it, you know, in the formation of a being, because if you think about this being the line of death into life, it's real tight up here, and the egg and the sperm come together and life starts. Actually, it starts long before that, but conception. And then you come around like this. Spiral goes around. Now, once that starts, that lasts really a pretty short time. No more than 6 weeks, and more likely about 2 weeks before you kick into here. And this is 3 months. This is 3 months. Maybe 2.5 months over here. And this is 3 months. Now here's what has to happen. When this connects, you come into this place. Now, do not for a second think that babies don't have consciousness. Babies got a lot of consciousness. Babies know what's going on. They know what's happening in the family. They know what the patterns are about what's going to happen when they're born. They know, you know, what the effects are about what's going on with them. They know all kinds of stuff. And it gets built into that undifferentiated place. Okay? It gets built into the cellular layers of the body. That's how fetal alcohol babies are made. That's how dope addicts sometimes are made. The predisposition for that is built in. It's built into the cellular layers through the genetic patterning, but also through the environmental events that are taking place. First 3 months of life, this is tenuous as hell. Now remember, this is a place where trust, faith, desire, knowing that you're loved, care, this is where need, nurturance, and abandonment happen.
I can ask questions. So 3 months.
Just a minute, let me finish what I'm doing here. Hold on to your questions, I want to.
I just need to know if it's before or after birth.
What?
The 3 months, is this, are you talking about after birth or in the womb?
No, I'm talking about conception and moving around the circle, and here's birth.
Okay, so it's before birth.
Okay. Yes, this is before birth.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get.
This is while developmental process is taking place of a fetus.
Okay.
Okay? For every one of us. This is what's going on. Now, suppose over here, right about the same time of rapprochement is where babies start moving in the womb. Suppose you're ambivalent about wanting to have this kid. Very interesting things can happen with all that. But when you are here, there really is still a way out. First 3 months of life. That's why we'll talk about you can abort up to 3 months. It's easy to get in to the cervix and get in and do an abortion because you can open the cervix here. It's not hard to do. There's still choice on both mother's part and baby's part. And babies leave during that 3 months. They take one look at what the hell's going on, or maybe they come in just to stir stuff up in the family and bring a person into a place to deal with whatever the process is. We don't know what that's about. But once you cross this line into the continuity, you cross into a place you can't retreat. Not when you're a baby. This is a place where the cervix shuts down. It's a big deal to open it up. You put the mother puts her life at risk if she tries to abort a child in here. Unless the child needs to abort and there's a contractive process that takes place in the womb, secondary usually to trauma, secondary to accidents, secondary to all kinds of things that'll mobilize. But basically, it is a no exit part. From 3 to 6 months, there ain't no exit out of the womb. And the babies that do come out about 5 months, now we have enough technology, if it's all mobilized, that maybe they'll survive. But for the most part, they really don't. You got to get into the 6-month period for this to happen. And even then, it's risky and troublesome as hell. It's a challenge. And that's the point where identity happens. On whatever level that we're talking about. Then you go into the last trimester and all kinds of growth and all kinds of challenges go on for both you and the mother. Until you cross this line down here and you die to the mother, related to the mother being responsible for the feed and care through the umbilical cord. And you're born to yourself where you take your breath of life. Okay? So this 3 months is about mastery, of getting enough of what you need to be able to make that move. Now, when that happens, you go on and you go back around this, here like this, and you come up, and now we're back in this 18 to 24 months. Well, this is actually bigger than that. This is about 18 months here. This is about 6 months when you cross this line. This is 2 months here after birth, and this is 4 months. And all kinds of things developmentally happen related to socialization, related to community, related to knowing you have a safe place in the world. All that's taking place up to here. All in that first 9 months of life. Now, it's already taken place in the womb. But you're still out there. Now, here in this session, it's important. That's why I'm going over this. Tanya said, I'm both uncomfortable and comfortable with my place in the family. That is rapprochement. So you know that you are dealing with between 18 and 24 months of life. Secondly, there's certain things that came out in her session. Tanya, just as a favor to me, would you do me a favor? T-A-N-Y-A, yes?
Yeah.
And what I want you to do is just very quickly give me a word that starts with a T. Any word, doesn't matter.
Tatiana, that's the long version of my
No,
name.
no, no, not a name.
Huh?
A word.
A word. Trust.
A,
Arrest.
okay, N,
No.
Y,
Yes.
A.
Awesome.
Okay. Now, if you read this down, trust, arrest, no, yes, and awesome. And what does that mean? Only she can put meaning to that. But if you look at the session, the ambivalence is even here in her name. Okay? Trust is arrested. No, she can't have it. Yes, she can. And it's an awesome whatever. I don't know. I mean, you know, we cannot put meanings to these words. But what's important is that even here it shows up, and you don't even know that it's there. Because nobody thinks about doing it that way. Now, what's affected here? Because what's involved with this quadrant is the development of playfulness, boundaries,
What age group is that?
18 to 20, well, it's
Still?
actually 6 months to about 2.5, or, yeah, 2.5 to 3. Give or take a month or two. Okay? More toward the 3 months than 2.5, but kids start really making shifts, some more quicker than others, but within this period. And by 3, you're full into this. I want to put on my own clothes. I want to run around. I want to do a lot of things. And a whole, you know, they're rejecting. And you reject who they're becoming because it doesn't fit your picture. That's a whole separate thing. I don't want to get there. What I want to talk about is what happens here. Now, joy. What goes wrong here is betrayal and being tricked. Joy develops here. Passion is out of here. Okay. Wanting. Comes out of here. It's a big deal, this quadrant and what develops. Now, in Tanya's session, one of the things that we know about her, and in the killing off of this stuff, because what we saw in her family was sadness, work, determination. They're really salt of the earth people. And it isn't these people can't love. They can. But what they can't do is really embrace life fully. They can't do it. The whole family. And the key to that, to really being aware of that, is what's on the sign on the concentration camp. I mean, Tanya even knows it in German. You know. Tell us what it was again. I didn't write it down.
It was Arbeit. It was A-R-B-E-I-T. Mocked fry.
And means?
Work makes you free.
And it does. That's a true statement. The problem is, it's a limiting statement unless you're aware what you define what work is for you. Because work is connected to joy. Work is connected to playfulness. Kids work their asses off around play. But that's not how it's meant. Also, these people are people who came out of the Depression. They're German, so they're really well defined anyway. They have very clear ideas about what's right and wrong and what they should and shouldn't do. So these people are caught up in sadness. They did not come up at a time where they could feel, where they could look at what that was about and move through it. And what's more, they're not going to. Not without some real support and encouragement to do that. Brad is a possibility for something more, but it's going to be a hard job. But he wants something more. He knows there's something more. We need to talk more. So in the process, he's trying to figure out how to get free of this too. But he's got a ways to go before he gets into his identity. Now, this session is about Tanya's identity and how can she be accepted in her family. That is the journey. This, to go through this gateway, is an ordeal. It's an ordeal because you're dealing with your own identity and you're dealing with what the patterns were that were set in place. Now, some of what you see where Joy in her family was assassinated is in voice modulation. Tanya's voice rarely does anything beyond this level. It's almost a flat line. Not quite, but almost. That is the killing of joy. It wasn't okay to feel joy. It wasn't okay to feel passion. Anything that gave her passion was quickly constrained. She had to work hard. And it's not that these values aren't good values. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about what affected her life. So, it was undermined with expressed sadness that underlined every bit of their world. Even though these are really good people, they're loving people, they cared about her, they had solid values, they did everything that they needed to do in the best way that they could. These were really good people in the sense of what we think about as good people. The only problem is the whole astral level is, and they can't go there. And they think they're doing really the right thing. Now, people who come out of the Depression era and through the Second World War and who saw and experienced what happened in those concentration camps. And I don't know what the relationship of that camp is with your mother or with your father, but it's an important thing to know. I don't know anybody in this room that would know this statement right here. It's just not, I mean, you know, and it was a part of your life enough that you...
I went there with my mom, actually.
Yeah, I understand. But the point is that that's your feminine nature. And she doesn't want to touch her feelings. I say, give me 3 adjectives or 5 or whatever, and she begins to cry. And she can't go there. She doesn't want to go in there. It's going to open up too much of her world, and she's frightened of that. And so, but what that does to a child who's in this period that all of us have to go through is a framework of how do you get excited about being a kid? How do you express joy? How do you make contact? How do you make connections? How do you make all that kind of stuff? And so it wasn't there. So Tanya found playfulness and joy in her dancing. She wanted it. I watched her dance. It's an incredible thing to see. And she's happy when she dances. And that's passion. But her family wanted her to have a living. Practical kinds of things. Not a bad thing, just was. So she's trying to recapture that. And in the process of that, the modulation that life itself brings. And it's tough. There's nothing easy about this. Now, Donna, so that basically, that's what you need to know about what's behind and what's going on in that session. Part of what she was doing was jumping over here to build a structure out of the confusion of not knowing how big. Not getting really her needs and wants in a family. Because this place up here is, because it's going to bring up some pain, and maybe they'll do it, and maybe they won't, and it remains to be seen, but that's the process. Now with Donna, what she says, I've been sitting here in this rocking chair as this process has been going on, going, I want to work, I don't want to work. I want to work, I don't want to work. It's another rapprochement. Okay? And as she does that, she starts crying and she can't hardly breathe. Another rapprochement. Because when you're contained, when you're coming through this period, you can't breathe. And this cycle goes on and on and on. The other thing is, to control and contain her feelings, she covered her eyes. And people will do that. They'll cover their eyes, A, because they don't want to be seen. That's a P5 behavior. And B, because it's the only way they can calm their internal space down. And if they can't see, people can't see, and they can get control. So they retreat into the darkness. It's another way of retreating, and we all do it. Sometimes light is very painful. That's why moving you out of your process last night involved a slow building of light, because
I'm so glad you turned the lights off when you did. I don't know who told you.
huh?
I'm so glad you turned the lights out when you did.
It was pretty plain what was happening, and I know that. I appreciate that acknowledgement. The deal is that what happens when people get into light, too much light makes them blind. It's physically hurt. It hurts physically. One of the things that we know that happened to the Buddhist monks in Tibet, when the Chinese came across, the Buddhists who were, they go into caves sometimes for long periods of time with no light. When they bring them out, it takes a couple of months, because they drill a little hole, and then every day they expand it so that they can, when they have an air hole, that it's fixed in such a way that light doesn't come in. And they get food in such a way that light doesn't come in. But what happened when the Chinese soldiers broke into those caves is all of them were struck instantly blind, because of the intensity of the light. And we all know, if we're in the shadows and we go outside into the sunlight, it hurts our eyes. We throw on sunglasses, or we cover our eyes because we know it's going to be painful. Okay. Then she says, I'm wrapped in a bundle in order to survive, a bubble, in order to survive, and I'm afraid to open that bubble. That's right here, prenatally. Prenatal statement. So something happened in the developmental cycle prenatally, as it relates to Donna, to what she's dealing with. And what's more, she took on a lot of shit that wasn't hers. You know, because she says, I feel such shame. You'd have no idea what I've done. I don't even know that I can tell anybody what I've done. Well, I don't know whether she did anything or didn't do anything, because what story she told me was she was 18. Fuck that, pardon me. Where are you? Oh, sorry, Maria. Screw that. Not the truth. I mean, it's true that she did some stuff, but there are other things that went into this long before, on several cycles of this wheel. Dan also talked about a rapprochement period, and what he did is jump over here into confusion, and he's building structure in his world to make more sense out of it and come out of it. And the thing that he said was there was both absence of boundaries and ultra rigid boundaries. And they always changed. So he was up here, but because of the change, was thrown down here into the confusion with a tremendous amount of shame and humiliation, because he was blamed for it and took it all on. This stuff is what causes dissociative decisions to shut down. And sometimes that dissociation is a split off, and sometimes it's letting the voice go. Because she had to fit in. Suppose Tanya would, and this was a loving family, remember that. This was not an abusive family. This is a family who cared about their children. But they were carrying their own stuff. Now suppose Tanya have held on to playfulness, to joy, to passion, and tried to survive in that family. It would have been a nightmare. It would have been worse than what it was. Because it would not have fit. In order for her to survive and to thrive in that family, and it brought her really good things. It really has. She had to take on some of those patterns. Now she's disengaging from them. She's got a loving family. She wants to know more about them. She wants them to know more about her. Maybe that'll happen. Who knows? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that her choices around this were healthy. Very healthy choices. And enabled her to move along, to excel in school, to excel in life, to set a firm foundation, to set a firm base for herself, and then to come back around and go, you know what, there's more. I want more. And I'm going to fight for it. That's what that session was about. And that's the ordeal. And she's got one ahead of her. It's all right. You know, she's done a good job with it. And that session was all about her claiming and knowing who she was and what she's up against and going through this into the expansion and claiming of these elements in her life. And she set it up to do that really well. You know, with some of what she's looking at doing next year, with what she's doing in the group, with going to the, and the whales are going to have a big hand in this, big one. Because they're full of, I mean, those whales are full of joy and wonder and peace, and there's, I mean, it's an amazing place. And in the part of what we need to do, and over again we'll do it. Now she's also at a point where she's completed school. She's been through a different kind of ordeal. And come June or July I guess it is, she'll finish this child and psychiatric, child and adolescent fellowship she's doing, and then she'll be finished. What is she going to do with the rest of her life? How is it going to be? What's the framework? That's the ordeal. And to do that, she's gathering data. That's what this is. So that she can fill it in. Okay, that's all I have to say about that session, unless you have questions. Tanya, do you have any?
You said something about you couldn't breathe. What were you referring to?
Donna.
But you said in that space you can't. Are you talking about
when you go into that depth of shame and humiliation and pain, what happens is you give up your breath because you don't dare. You'll go into such deep sobbing, and what you're trying to do is hide. So if you cut off the breath, you can stop a process. And we'll see people do that all the time when they're crying. You know, and part of it is they really are scared to death that they can't stop once they start. There's some reality to that. And maybe you're going to cry for a long time, but you know what? It stops. Really does. And but how many of you were in tears that if you started to cry, you were told, don't you do that or I'll give you something really worth crying for?
Well, we had to bite down on stuff. So
Right, you know, stop. Don't express yourself. And people learn how to hide. And so when you're crying, you'll see people go, you know, and they're pushing against that edge. But they cannot let go. That's what that's about. That's that. I want to cry, I can't cry. I want to cry, I can't cry. I want to cry, I can't cry, because I can't have what I want, and I damn sure can't have what I need. Because you got to go through this to get to here.
Okay, I'm confused.
Well, I'm curious. We know Tanya has a very healthy, loving family. I see a lot of myself in this rapprochement, in that there was no such thing as play, it was all survival. How does this play out in an abusive family? Is it the same? Is the ordeal the same, and you just
Yeah,
have to
it's
keep
just
moving
different
to the same
challenges. The other thing about it, I mean, all of us have this in one way or another. It just reflects and looks in different ways, you know.
Can you regain that playfulness? I mean, you can regain boundaries.
See me? I can play.
I mean, I'm
I mean,
terrified
I'm
of
really,
playing.
I know you are, and I know you don't know how. I used to send people who had that kind of problem to work in daycare nurseries with 2- and 3-year-olds.
Really?
I'd send them in to volunteer in daycare nurseries.
This is your 2-minute warning.
You know, and daycare centers to volunteer, not get paid, to volunteer.
To
And
actually
to go
learn to play.
to learn how to play. Kids are great teachers about that. I used to run psychodrama groups for people, adults, to learn, you know, to learn about playfulness and this kind of thing. So we spent a whole weekend do that, and then about 3 o'clock I'd have my granddaughter Kate, when she was about 3, show up. And then, because I always ended with a story. And, you know, Katie loves stories. So I'd start to read and she'd go, well, what is that, Grandma? And what is this? And hurry up! And, you know, and I did that because I'd look at them and I'd say, now, how many of you lost this? And this is your work to come back here.